I've been asked over and over and over again to share my expertise, my opinion, my commentary on the Reiner family tragedy. And I want to start off by saying I do not know the Reiners. I don't know the family. I have nothing to do with this specific family. But I do know addiction. I do know rehabs. I do know mental health disturbances and conditions. I do know forensic psychology. I do know Hollywood culture. And this problem, this situation, this tragic event is all of it combined. I also don't comment frequently on everything happening in the world and all the stories happening in the world, but I feel compelled. I feel like I need to share my voice in this situation because there is so much misinformation out there. There is so much blame. Was it the medication? Was it all schizophrenics? Are people violent that are altered? Is the real problem addiction? Is the real problem pharmaceuticals? Is it sociopaths? Is it what is it? What is going on right now? And a lot of people are scared, and a lot of people are asking questions. Do rehabs really work? Are people violent? People that have family members with mental health disturbances are asking a lot of questions. People that have family members that are suffering from addiction have a lot of questions. There's questions about just humanity in general. Is Hollywood culture to blame for this? Are there certain family dynamics that could have been altered or changed or improved? So rest assured, I'm going to go through all of this in this video and many other videos to follow. So hopefully this will help, and I'll be able to give a little clarity and a little insight, because the story I know is changing every day, every hour, probably. Okay, so why me? Why am I someone to share my voice? I'm a board-certified psychiatrist. I'm also a board-certified addiction medicine specialist. I've owned, operated, and exited a rehab in Los Angeles, in Beverly Hills. I've worked with many A-list celebrities and their families, and I've had the opportunity to heal people over the last 30 years. I've published in peer-reviewed journals on addiction and mental health disturbances and conditions. I have consulted at Twin Towers, where in forensics and forensic psychology and psychiatry, where he is being held right now. I've had the opportunity to really work in this field. I'm very dedicated to personal development, making people better, and how to overcome self-sabotage and how to overcome conditions that I believe are just as much spiritual as they are biological, psychological, social. And before I get into really what I want to go over, which is what are the 5 possibilities that this could be? How could this have ended up happening? What are the 5, we call it a differential in the medical and psychological world, but what is the differential by which this act could have happened? What are the 5 reasons? And I'm going to get to that in a second. The first thing I want to say, though, is I want to explain the history of addiction on this. People used to say, well, if you had an addiction problem, it's a disease of will. You just aren't doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's a problem with will. And that changed to, well, it's a childhood problem. That's the problem. It was something that happened in your childhood, some kind of trauma. If we fix that trauma problem from your childhood, you'll be better. You won't need to self-medicate for the pain from your childhood, and now you'll be better. That's where like psychoanalysis and all this other stuff came into play, right? Then it became, Alan Leshner, head of the NIDA, the National Institute of Drug Abuse, said in the late 80s, he was like, addiction is a brain disease. That's the problem. Addiction is a brain disease. So we need pharmaceuticals, and we need technology, and we need all sorts of things to help fix the brain, fix the neurotransmission. As a result, your family member will get better. You'll get better because addiction is a brain disease. Then it became about trauma. Don't ask about the addiction, ask about the trauma, ask about the pain. And we need to really focus on trauma because addiction is unresolved trauma. Well, I personally believe that addiction is a spiritual disease that has biological, psychological, and social implications, consequences, and elements to it. I cannot tell you the number of people that I have worked with that either have a frank, almost pure addiction or some kind of a dual diagnosis, which means co-occurring dual diagnosis means a combination of addiction and a mental health problem. I cannot tell you the number of people that I saw that were spiritually bankrupt. There was a dysfunction in their soul, in their spirit. They were so disconnected. They had no idea who they were. They hadn't really formed their own identity yet. They were lost. They were confused. They didn't even have the confidence or the purpose or meaning to feel like they were a functional human being. None of that was there. It all had to be built. So that's why I say that. So, okay, so let's get into it. So the 5 possibilities of why this could have happened. 1, psychosis due to an illicit drug. So again, I do not know the Reiner family. I am completely just giving my expert opinion so that it can help other people. And that means an illicit drug, usually a stimulant, most commonly methamphetamine, could also be PCP, could also be cocaine, could also be some other type of stimulant, but most often it's methamphetamine. The research behind this, if you look at research in drug addiction and the pharmacological effects of illicit substances, there's a lot of research looking at methamphetamine and its effects on executive functioning, impaired judgment, impaired reasoning, impaired ability to know right from wrong. It can make you violent. It can make you lose a sense of reality. Now, do most people high on meth commit murder? No. Do most people high on meth get violent? No. But the drug itself can mess up your brain. It can cause all types of impairments. And so it has to be in the differential that this could have been drug-induced. Okay. The second, psychosis due to a mental health condition. He was recently, I think it was recent, I'm not positive, but diagnosed with schizophrenia. First off, schizophrenia is usually diagnosed between the ages of 16 and 17 to about 25 because the brain has to mature and develop to a certain place where you can actually make that diagnosis. Now, some people are diagnosed earlier, but that's generally when people are diagnosed. And I want to be really clear on this. Almost all schizophrenics I have met are not violent, at least to this degree. Now, can people that suffer from schizophrenia get irritated, agitated, bothered, confused, disoriented, respond to voices, have internal stimuli and intrusive thoughts? Absolutely, 100%. You and I have both, we've all seen homeless people talking to themselves, erratic, seemingly like they could be violent. That can occur. Do they kill people? Rarely. Rarely do they get violent. In fact, most schizophrenics are more likely to be victims of violence rather than the perpetrators. But can it happen? Yes. Does it usually happen? No. Is it more likely to happen where someone would murder their parents just because they had schizophrenia? No. And there's also something called schizoaffective disorder where you have a mood component. You know, if somebody's described as having an erratic mood or a bizarre mood or an up and down mood, there's the possibility they have schizoaffective and not just schizophrenia. There's also the possibility that both of these things were happening, where somebody could be misdiagnosed or on the wrong medication or and having a mental health disturbance with active auditory hallucinations, command auditory hallucinations, persecutory delusions, and they have methamphetamine that they've taken as well. And now you double the problem. That is a possibility as well. And it is a more likely possibility. Third, sociopathy. So people can be diagnosed as sociopaths or psychopaths. And it is, I mean, I can't tell you the number of people, just being a physician, people coming to me that are like, I think my boyfriend's a psychopath. I think my neighbor's a sociopath. That customer service person at Costco is a total sociopath. You know, people just throw around these labels all the time. There are not that many people in society that are sociopaths or psychopaths. Okay, it's not super common at all. But there are warning signs usually that occur when a kid growing to be an adult tortures animals. They're abusive to animals. There's a disconnection. You don't feel that love that you normally feel with kids. They feel no remorse. They feel no guilt. They're scheming a lot. Maybe they get into a lot of fights. They're definitely signs. Every once in a while, people are really surprised, but most of the time there are signs that may lead to a forensic issue down the road. But I want to be really clear. Sociopathy comes in a spectrum. There are a lot of CEOs that are sociopaths. Now, are they violent sociopaths? No. But they're scheming. They know how to work people. They know how to manipulate. And some of them are really good CEOs because they know how to do that. Sociopathy is a state or a condition whereby, you know, I'm not saying it's functional or it's highly functional, because those same CEOs usually have a problem in some other aspect of their life. But sociopathy doesn't mean killer. It doesn't mean murderer. It just means a state by which people may have no remorse, no guilt, and might act on impulses and might have poor impulse control. Another one that's used, the fourth here, is the possibility that's being thrown around of medication. And perhaps there was a medication change and the side effect to the medication may have been the problem. Well, when you look at it, first off, schizophrenics are people that are suffering from schizophrenia don't usually have violent tendencies. That's the first thing. Second thing, the main side effect to antipsychotic medications that could cause agitation is something called akathisia. It's where you feel like you want to jump out of your skin. And it is a legit feeling. It is that restlessness, that agitation that can lead to a little bit of aggressiveness and yelling and like you just feel like you want to jump out of your skin. That does not lead to murder. That leads internally to feeling terrible, feeling awful about your body and your mind and what's going on. You just want to stop. You want that feeling to stop. You want that feeling to stop. It usually does not lead to this kind of stuff. Now, if the person's on the wrong medication, you could have breakthrough psychotic symptoms. And if those breakthrough symptoms are command auditory hallucinations, or they're responding to internal stimuli, or they're persecutory delusions, and those delusions are now on a family member because you're paranoid and you think they're out to get you, or they're stopping you from something, or they're going to hurt you or something else, there is always the possibility that you could act on that. So I'm not going to totally rule that out, but it's probably rare. All of this is rare. But of the 5 rare possibilities, drugs, mental health, sociopathy, and medication change is probably the least of these rare. And the 5th one is what I call trauma vengeance, which is there was either a real trauma that occurred, maybe childhood, maybe whenever, and you blame a family member or family members, or it was a distorted reality that you were traumatized. And in that distortion or that delusion of the trauma, you had a sense that you needed to protect yourself, and thus you acted upon it. Again, really rare. And all these are rare, but rare. The most common of the rare possibilities are a combination of drugs on board, like meth, a psychotic type drug that can create psychotic symptoms, combined with maybe an untreated or poorly treated or misdiagnosed or non-compliance with medications, whereby there is an active psychotic effect happening due to a mental health disorder. The combination of those two with some sociopathy mixed in. That is the most common of the super uncommon and rare problems that we're seeing here. There is so much more I can talk about this. The limits of love, what family members can do in this situation, how you handle somebody who has an out-of-control addiction, how you handle somebody who has a really significant mental health disturbance, more commentary on addiction, more commentary on psychosis and what that looks like. People were talking at I guess it was Conan O'Brien's party, how the individual we're talking about would like kind of have this dull look and ask kind of out there questions and almost this fixed stare and fixed gaze. I mean, psychosis looks like that. When somebody is in an active state of psychosis, it's a fixed stare. They might not even blink. They might be really bad. Psychosis can look like catatonia. It can look like you literally are paralyzed and you're just like fixed staring. It almost looks like you're because I've seen this in patients that I've worked with where it scared me because I was looking at them and it was almost like I was looking through them, or like there was nothing there. There was nothing I could connect to, and that was very scary. And then if they ask you kind of out of nowhere questions with that fixed stare and that fixed gaze, it could be very scary. It could be threatening. It could be, I'm not connecting to this person. I don't know what to do kind of thing. So I can talk a lot about that. I can also talk about Hollywood culture, and maybe I'll do that in another video. I've lived and worked in this Hollywood culture, not with all patients. I've treated everyone from the incarcerated to homeless to royalty to really rich people to CEOs. But I've also worked in this Hollywood scene, and there is definitely something to the fact that it is a distorted reality of its own with handlers and a lot of impression management, and you might get access to great care on paper, but it's not the care that the individual needs. I want to be really clear about that. I'm not going to slam all these rehabs because sometimes it just needs to be the right time for somebody to gain the insight and the awakening, the experience of awakening that they need. But there is a lot to the concept of the Hollywood family and Hollywood culture, and are you getting the right treatment for your child or your family member? And so many questions on the limits of love and when do you cut somebody off and when do you not. So I'm going to save that for the next videos. But I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear in the comments section, what do you think is going on here? What are the psychological implications you see? Does this make sense to you? I just want to offer the voice of somebody who's been through this, who has seen it, on so many different levels. I've seen incredible stories of people, surviving this and leading really high-level functional lives. I've seen some people that just suffer and they continue to suffer and they get a little better. And I've seen some people where it's a roller coaster. They get better, they get worse, they get better, they get worse. I have also worked with serial killers. I've worked with some really scary people on the forensic side of things. And again, it is so rare to see something like this happen. It is so rare. So I want to go out, I want to leave this video by saying, please do not think schizophrenics do this. People suffering from schizophrenia. Please do not think the average child that has an addiction has this kind of behavior. Mental health is a legit thing, and I've seen a lot of people recover from mental health challenges. Do they get cured? I don't like the cure word, but they can manage it and they can lead really high-level functional lives. Please don't think people with addiction are all violent or angry people that are going to be like that the rest of their lives. When someone has an addiction, I hate the word hijack, but especially like a deep addiction, it's like they're not the same person. It's until they get really healed, it's like you're dealing with somebody that's not your family member. It's somebody different. And they need that healing to find themselves again. That's why I feel like addiction is more of a spiritual disease. So that's what I wanted to say today. And stay tuned for more videos. Please leave comments on this. How you feel about this. What's going on with you? Do you have a family member you're worried about? Are you worried about yourself? Like, let's share this together so we can try to diminish the amount of misinformation out there and really share good information that can help people. Okay? Thanks.